In 1562, John Hawkins, an English navigator, seeing the want of slaves in the West Indies, determined to enter upon the trade. Already Negro slaves had been introduced by the Spaniards into the West Indies. The first enslaved the natives, but they couldn't handle the required toil, and they were soon almost extinguished by hard labor and cruelty. In 1619, slavery was introduced to Virginia, when a Dutch ship traded African slaves for food. Unable to find cheap labor from other sources, white settlers increasingly turned to slaves imported from Africa. By the 1700s, in British North America, slavery generally meant African slavery. Southern plantations using slave labor produced the great export crops: tobacco, rice, forest products, and indigo. That made the American colonies prosperous. Many North merchants made their fortunes either in slave trade or by exporting the products of slave labor. African slavery was central to the development of British North America. All realistic hope slavery might eventually die out in the South ended when a Massachusetts native, Eli Whitney, invented the cotton gin, a simple machine that enabled textile mills to use the type of cotton grown in most of the South. At that time, the world demand for cotton exploded. By 1840, cotton was produced in the American South. It earned more money than all other U.S. exports combined. Many white settlers came to believe that cotton was a crop dependent on slave labor. Over time, most took for granted that their way of life was inseparable from African slavery. Slavery was not the only source of dispute. The North and South were very different in nature and wanted different things for their government. In the North, society was fast becoming industrial. Immigrants in search of work were arriving by the thousands. In addition, women began to leave farms seeking opportunity in the cities. Immigrants and women provided an abundant source of inexpensive labor to fuel factories. Industrialization increased the amount of textiles produced and therefore the demand for more slave labor. Entrepreneurs looking to develop the new industries demanded protection from cheap manufactured goods imported from Europe. Although the Constitution did not use the term slavery, Article 4 provided the return of escaping persons held to service or labor, such as fugitive slaves. Article 1 provided that the slave trade would end 20 years after the Constitution was ratified, which was in 1808. The Constitution left many questions about slavery unanswered. In particular, the question of slavery status in any new territories acquired by the U.S. The failure to deal with issues of slavery in the Constitution granted future conflict. The question of who had power to allow or disallow slavery in the territories and the newly formed states, the federal government or the states, provoked a heated national debate that would last for decades, resulting in a number of compromises. The proposed admission of Missouri as a slave state in 1820 led to the Missouri Compromise. Under its term, Maine was admitted as a free state. At the same time, Missouri came in as a slave state, maintaining the balance between slave and free. Additional, Congress prohibited slavery in all western territories lying above Missouri's southern boundary.